She thought it was just a fleeting moment of passion, a one-night escape from her heartbreak. But what began as a quiet drink with a stranger in a wheelchair would change Arya's life forever. Because the man she gave herself to wasn't just anyone. He was on E of the richest CEOs in the country. And now, she's carrying his twins. The city shimmered beneath a veil of midnight mist, its pulse slowing as the world around it slept. But Arya Bennett wasn't ready to sleep. She wasn't even sure she could. Her heels clicked softly across the marble floor of the penthouse hotel lounge, the kind of place where silence was golden and solitude cost as much as champagne. She needed both. Her heart still ached from the argument with her sister, another reminder that she didn't quite fit anywhere these days. She was tired of being misunderstood, of being expected to have it all figured out when in truth she was just drifting. That's when she saw him. He sat alone by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, eyes fixed on the city below. His posture was quiet, but composed. A charcoal suit hugged his frame, broad-shouldered and upright even though he sat in a wheelchair. Arya was about to look away, until he turned slightly, and their eyes met. Steel blue, haunted, like hers. She hesitated, then walked toward him, driven by something she couldn't name. "Is this seat taken?" she asked gently, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. He looked surprised. Up close, he was devastatingly handsome. Strong features, a clean-shaven jaw, and that quiet confidence worn by men who've weathered storms and still managed to stand tall. Or sit tall in his case. "Be my guest," he said, voice deep, controlled. She lowered herself onto the chair, offering a polite smile. "I'm Arya." "Gabriel," he replied. There was a flicker of curiosity behind his guarded gaze. "You don't seem like the kind of woman who dines alone." She chuckled softly. "And you don't seem like the kind of man who goes unnoticed in a room." That earned a smile. Brief, subtle, but there. They talked. At first, it was safe. What brought her to the city, his interest in architecture, her failed job interview that morning. But then, the layers began to peel. Slowly, deliberately. Gabriel shared that he had been paralyzed in an accident years ago. He didn't dwell on the details, but the heaviness in his voice when he said, "Everything changed after that," spoke volumes. Arya didn't pity him. She admired him. There was strength in his vulnerability, grace in how he carried his pain. She touched his hand. That must have been hard. His jaw tightened. Some days are worse than others. Tonight was one of them, until now. A jazz tune drifted from the speakers, its melody smoky and slow. On impulse, Arya stood and reached out. "Will you dance with me?" Gabriel's eyes dropped to his lap, to the chair. "Arya, I can't." "We'll sit and sway," she whispered. No pressure, just connection. Before he could talk himself out of it, she stepped forward, guiding his hand to her waist and slowly settling onto his lap, her arms circling his shoulders. "Is this okay?" His hands trembled slightly as they wrapped around her back. Yes, they swayed together, more suggestion than movement, but intimate all the same. Arya rested her cheek against his, her body attuned to his heartbeat, her own racing in tandem. The city faded away. She tilted her face toward his, and their lips met, tentative at first, then hungry. His mouth tasted of whiskey and restraint undone. Her fingers tangled in his hair as her heart surrendered to the heat of his kiss. When they pulled apart, breathless, there were no words. Only a question in his eyes. She nodded. Moments later, they were in the elevator. His penthouse was luxurious but not flashy. A man of wealth, clearly, but with deeper wounds than money could heal. He kissed her again in the foyer, this time harder, needier. Arya melted into him. Her back hit the wall. His lips didn't leave hers as he maneuvered them toward the bedroom. Clothes fell away like petals. Her dress slipped down her shoulders. His shirt jointed on the floor. His chest bore scars, testaments of survival. She kissed each one. He was all heat and muscle, and as she climbed into his lap once more, she felt his desire pressing hot and urgent against her. Gabriel hesitated only long enough to ask, "Are you sure?" She answered by guiding him into her, gasping as their bodies joined. They made love like people who didn't believe in second chances, fiercely, completely, as if the night might vanish before they could finish breathing each other in. Afterward, they lay tangled in silk sheets. Gabriel traced lazy circles on her hip. Arya's head rested on his chest. Neither spoke for a long time. When she finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. "I need it tonight," she whispered. So did I. She wanted to ask if they'd meet again, but something in his eyes warned her not to. Whatever this was, it was meant to stay wrapped in moonlight, in memory. Arya fell asleep in his arms, and in the quiet darkness, Gabriel held her like she was the first softness he'd known in years. Arya thought it was just one night, but everything's about to change. Have you ever had a moment that shifted your entire world, even when you least expected it? Let us know in the comments. And if this story has you curious, click like to keep it going and hit that subscribe button for more passionate, unexpected journeys. Arya woke to silence. Soft morning light filtered through tall glass panes, casting a warm haze across the sheets. Gabriel was still asleep, his expression calm, almost boyish in its peace. She lay beside him for a moment longer, memorizing the quiet curve of his jaw, the steady rise and fall of his chest. It felt like a dream, but she knew better. The memories from last night burned vividly in her body and soul. Still, this was not her world. She had entered it like a shadow, danced through one night of light, and now it was time to fade. Quietly, she slipped out of bed and dressed. She didn't leave a note, didn't want to turn a delicate goodbye into a tangled explanation. Before leaving, she spotted a business card on the glass table near the lounge. Gabriel Huxley, CEO, Huxley Tech Industries. She stared at the name. So that's who he was. She tucked the card into her purse, not as a trophy, but as proof that the night had been real, that this mystery man hadn't just swept her off her feet. He had rewritten the map beneath them. The elevator doors closed behind her, and with each floor descending, the magic receded. But it didn't disappear. The following weeks unraveled in strange ways. Arya returned to her tiny apartment, resumed her temp job at a real estate agency, and tried to suppress every vivid detail from that night. She'd known it was temporary. She told herself not to get attached. Still, her thoughts returned to him more often than she'd admit. To his voice, his hands, the way he'd whispered her name with reverence, like it meant something deeper. She should have let it go. But then, she missed her period. One test, then two, each result more certain than the last. Pregnant. The room spun. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the edge of her bed, heart thundering. She wrapped her arms around her midsection protectively, an instinct that came unbidden. This wasn't just a delay or a scare. This was real. A doctor confirmed it later that week. But what shocked her even more was the sonogram. 2 flickering heartbeats. Twins. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she stared at the screen. 2 tiny lights pulsing in sync. Arya didn't know whether to laugh or panic. All she knew was that she was not alone anymore, and neither were they. Gabriel needed to know. She tried calling the number on the card. Each time she was met with cold professionalism. "I'm sorry, Mr. Huxley is not available. I'm afraid he's in meetings all day. I can take a message, but he likely won't be able to return it personally." She hung up again and again, her heart hardening with each dismissal. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about 2 lives growing inside her, 2 lives that deserved answers. She owed it to them to try one more time. So she put on her best blazer, held her head high, and walked straight into the gleaming high-rise tower bearing his name. The lobby of Huxley Tech buzzed with sleek minimalism and quiet power. Arya approached the reception desk and calmly explained, "I need to speak with Mr. Gabriel Huxley. It's urgent." The assistant raised a skeptical brow. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I won't leave until I speak to him." Perhaps it was her tone, or the way her hand subconsciously rested on her belly, but eventually she was escorted to the top floor. As the doors opened into a luxurious office, Gabriel looked up from behind a vast desk. His expression went from surprise to shock in an instant. "Arya?" He wheeled closer, brushing aside a conversation with someone in mid-sentence. I can't believe it's you." She hesitated, nerves tangling in her throat. "I'm sorry to barge in, but you left me no choice." Gabriel's brows knit. "My assistant." She didn't say anything. Arya pressed a hand to her belly. "Gabriel, I tried. I called, multiple times." His eyes dropped to her hand. Realization dawned. "Is something wrong?" he asked carefully. She took a breath that seemed to shake the very ground. "I'm pregnant." Silence. "I'm having your babies." His hands gripped the wheels of his chair. "Pregnant," he echoed, as if testing the word in his mouth. "You're sure they're mine?" Her eyes flashed with hurt, but she nodded. "Yes, There was no one else. It was that night. Gabriel leaned back, shock washing over his face like a tidal wave. I was told I couldn't, that I might never. Her voice softened. Well, it seems life had other plans. Twins? He asked, stunned. Arya smiled faintly. 2 heartbeats. He blinked rapidly, his hand reaching instinctively toward her. May I? She stepped closer. He placed his palm gently on her stomach. Though there was no bump yet, the gesture spoke of something sacred. His throat worked as if trying to swallow emotion. I don't even know what to say, he murmured. You don't have to say anything now, she replied. But you deserve to know. So do they. He looked up at her, blue eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you for telling me, and I'm sorry for not making myself reachable. If I had known... She nodded. It's okay. We're here now. He hesitated, then asked, Arya, would you consider staying with me? Just until the babies arrive, you'll have everything you need. Doctors, safety, comfort. Her instinct was to refuse. But then she thought of the tiny apartment with paper-thin walls and rising bills, of long subway rides and late-night nausea, of stress that could harm more than just her. This wasn't about pride. It was about giving her children the best chance at life. I'll stay, she said quietly. For now. Relief poured across his face. Thank you. The car that arrived at Arya's apartment the next morning gleamed like it had never known dust. A uniformed driver opened the door for her with a practiced nod. It was surreal. This wasn't the world she belonged to. Yet here she was, her suitcase at her feet, her hand resting protectively over the tiny lives growing inside her. Gabriel's estate stood on a hill, overlooking the city's skyline. Modern lines met nature's curves in its design, glass and steel wrapped around gardens and terraces. As the gates opened and the car pulled in, Arya felt a strange flutter in her chest. Not nerves. Something else. Possibility. Gabriel met her at the entrance. He wore a soft blue shirt and dark slacks, casual yet crisp. His expression was calm, but there was an unmistakable flicker of joy in his eyes. Welcome, he said simply. Arya stepped inside, greeted by warm light and quiet elegance. The air smelled of eucalyptus and something faintly citrus. The foyer opened into a grand space where clean lines met cozy textures. Gabriel showed her around. That's the kitchen. We brought in a nutritionist to plan meals, but feel free to tell the chef whatever you like. Over here is the guest suite. It's yours for as long as you need. She ran her fingers lightly along the polished handrail. It's beautiful. Almost too perfect. Gabriel glanced at her. If it doesn't feel like home, we'll make adjustments. His thoughtfulness caught her off guard. There was a quiet sincerity in everything he did. No grand speeches, no rehearsed lines, just quiet consistency. Over the next week, they slipped into an unexpected rhythm. Mornings started with warm teas and shared conversations at the kitchen island. Evenings often ended in the sitting room where they'd share stories, his about the company's early days, hers about her misadventures as a freelance writer. Gabriel insisted on attending every prenatal appointment. He asked careful questions, took notes, and made sure the doctors treated Arya like royalty. His commitment wasn't performative, it was intimate, deeply felt. One night after a checkup, they stopped at a late-night bakery he remembered she'd mentioned weeks ago. She bit into a warm cinnamon bun and moaned in delight. Gabriel chuckled. I'd fly in a dozen if it makes you smile like that. The words caught her off guard. He hadn't meant them to be flirtatious, but her heart leapt all the same. Days passed, and with each one, the house began to feel less like borrowed space and more like a sanctuary. They decorated the nursery together. Gabriel picked out the crib, hand-carved oak, soft ivory bedding. Arya chose the curtains, sunlight filtering cotton with delicate stars embroidered near the hem. One evening, while folding tiny onesies together, Gabriel paused. Do you ever think about what happens after they're born? Arya hesitated. All the time. I try not to get ahead of myself, but it's impossible not to imagine. He finished for her. She looked up from a pair of baby booties. What about you? His smile was faint. I think about late-night feedings, learning lullabies, wondering if they'll inherit my chin. Arya laughed, warmth curling inside her. They're lucky if they do. His eyes lingered on hers, quiet and intense. She felt the air thicken between them, a pause loaded with things unspoken. Then he cleared his throat. We'll figure it out, one day at a time, One crisp afternoon, Arya went out to the garden. The roses were in full bloom, their scent thick in the air. She knelt to snap a picture, careful of her growing belly. A loose stone caught her heel. Her body tipped forward, and just as she gasped, arms caught her. "Careful," Gabriel said, breathless, holding her steady. Her hands clutched his shoulders instinctively. They were inches apart. Arya's breath hitched. The moment pulsed with electricity. His hand lingered at her waist, his other gently brushing her cheek. "I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you," he whispered. Their faces inched closer. Her eyes dropped to his lips. And then, a gust of wind stirred the trees. He pulled back. The moment broke. "Let's get you inside," he said quickly, already wheeling away. Arya stood frozen a second longer before following. Inside, neither of them mentioned it, but it hung between them, taut and unspoken, the almost kiss. Later that night, Arya stood in the hallway outside the study. She watched Gabriel through the doorway, head bowed, staring at a closed laptop, tension written across his frame. "Knocking feels silly at this point," she said softly, stepping inside. He turned. "Couldn't sleep?" She shook her head. "You?" "I've been thinking," he said, closing the laptop, "about how fragile this all is, about how fast it's happening." Arya walked closer. "It doesn't feel fast to me. It feels right." He looked up, and something in his eyes shifted. Fear, longing, regret. "Arya," he said gently, "you don't owe me anything. You're here for the babies. I won't ask for more, but what if I want more?" The words stunned even her, but they were true. Gabriel stared at her. "You shouldn't have to sacrifice your future for someone like me." She stepped closer. "You don't get to decide what I need." He inhaled sharply. "You deserve someone who can give you the world." "I don't want the world. I want honesty. I want love. I want a partner who sees me, who fights for me." Gabriel's voice cracked. "I see you." Arya touched his face. "Then stop pushing me away." His resolve cracked like ice under heat, and in a rush, he pulled her into his lap, arms curling around her like she was the last warmth he'd ever know. "I'm terrified," he murmured against her neck. "But I can't lose you." "You won't," she whispered, sealing her vow with a kiss. Their lips met, softly at first, then with growing intensity. It wasn't just passion. It was release, relief, recognition, a culmination of longing too long denied. When they pulled apart, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me," he whispered. "After the twins, after everything. Stay." Her answer was a kiss that needed no translation. The days that followed were filled with tenderness, tentative at first, then bold. Something between Arya and Gabriel had shifted that night in the study. The walls were down. There were no more polite retreats, no more guest suite boundaries. They had crossed a line into a space where hearts spoke louder than fears. One morning, Arya woke in Gabriel's bed. Sunlight spilled across the room like a golden veil. She turned to find him already awake, watching her as though afraid she might vanish. "You stayed," he whispered. She smiled, brushing a hand through his hair. "I'm not going anywhere." That day, Gabriel canceled his meetings. He insisted on making her breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and fruit, all slightly uneven but made with genuine effort. They sat on the terrace under soft morning skies, the city skyline below them, and spoke of baby names, music, and childhood regrets. "You ever think about what your life might have looked like if the accident never happened?" Arya asked. Gabriel paused, chewing slowly. "Every day. I used to mourn that version of myself. And now?" He looked up. "Now I'm grateful for the path that led me to you." The honesty in his voice struck her like a prayer. Later that afternoon, Arya stood in the nursery, running her fingers over the tiny folded clothes, imagining her daughters in each one. Gabriel wheeled in quietly behind her. "We've created something beautiful, haven't we?" She turned and nodded, emotion surfacing. "More than I ever dreamed." He reached for her hand, guiding her gently into his lap. It had become second nature now, this rhythm between them. Arya wrapped her arms around his shoulders. "I used to think I'd never be enough for someone like you." His brows lifted. "Someone like me? A man with purpose, power, vision. I felt like a stray cat you fed out of pity." Gabriel frowned, cupping her cheek. "Don't you ever say that again. You didn't just walk into my life. You breathed life back into it. You taught me how to feel again." Tears threatened to escape her lashes, but she blinked them back. "I love you," he said with certainty. Her voice was barely audible. "I love you too." Gabriel's hand slid to her swollen belly. "Our girls, they're going to grow up knowing love, real love." That night, the air felt thick with longing. Arya stood at the mirror in a simple silk gown. Her body had changed, curves fuller, movements slower, but Gabriel's gaze never wavered. "You're glowing," he said, breathless. She turned to him. "Do you still want me?" He didn't answer with words. He wheeled closer, stopping just inches away. His hands traced along her waist, reverent and sure. "I've always wanted you," he murmured. "Every moment since that night." She climbed gently into his lap, careful of her belly. He kissed her, slow, deliberate, memorizing her taste again. The months apart, the weeks of restraint, all dissolved into that moment. They moved together like music, hands guiding, lips trailing. She unbuttoned his shirt with practiced grace. He kissed her collarbone, her jaw, her mouth, whispering her name between each touch. In the master bedroom, they undressed each other with quiet worship. Gabriel helped her lie back against pillows stacked for support. His hands ran over every curve of her body, pausing at the swell of her abdomen. "She's strong," he said, hand pressed to her left side. Arya chuckled. "You're already guessing who's who." "Instinct," he whispered, before kissing lower, along her belly, her hips, the insides of her thighs. Arya's breath caught as his mouth found its mark, sending fire rippling through her limbs. "Gabriel, I want you to feel everything," he said hoarsely, before continuing. She did, over and over. When he finally guided himself into her, their eyes locked, twin flames lit by love, not lust. He moved slowly, holding her hands in his. Their rhythm was tender, deliberate. Every breath shared, every shiver mutual. "I've got you," he whispered, over and over, as if reminding himself as much as her. Arya's climax came like a wave, sweeping, consuming. She clung to him, burying her face in his shoulder. Moments later, Gabriel followed, groaning her name like a sacred vow. They stayed connected long after the passion ebbed. Their bodies entangled, their souls bare. No words were needed. The next morning, Arya sat on the edge of the bed, watching Gabriel feed her a slice of ripe mango. "I could get used to this," she teased. "You should," he replied with mock sternness. "You deserve to be spoiled." "But what about after?" she asked, not playfully. "What happens once the twins come? Once the chaos sets in?" Gabriel's eyes softened. "Then we take each day as it comes, together." Arya leaned in, brushing a kiss across his mouth. "Promise?" He nodded. "In every way that matters." The first contraction hit just before dawn. Arya was half asleep, curled against Gabriel's chest, when a low, sharp ache gripped her lower abdomen. At first, she brushed it off. False labor had come and gone for the past week. But when the second and third pangs followed, stronger and closer together, her eyes flew open. "Gabriel," she whispered, nudging his shoulder. He stirred immediately, sensing the change in her voice. "What is it?" I think it's time." In seconds, Gabriel was fully awake, adrenaline and awe flickering across his features. Okay, breathe. We've rehearsed this." With calm precision, he helped her up, called the doctor, and alerted the staff. The car was waiting within minutes. As they drove toward the hospital, Arya's hand gripped his tightly, and Gabriel whispered encouragement through every bump and contraction. "You're strong. I'm right here. We're almost there." The delivery room was a blur of white coats and steady instructions. Arya felt every pressure, every burn, every overwhelming surge, and through it all, Gabriel never left her side. He held her hand, kissed her knuckles, whispered her name like a prayer. And then, a cry split the air. Then, another. 2 perfect daughters entered the world, tiny red-faced squirming miracles. Arya wept. Gabriel did too. The nurse placed one twin in his arms, the other in Arya's. The moment was suspended in eternity. Gabriel stared at his daughter, eyes brimming with something deeper than pride. "She's real," he whispered. "They both are." Arya laughed through her tears. "We made them." He kissed her forehead, voice shaking. "You did everything. You gave me a family." Back at the estate, the rhythm of life shifted. Nights bled into days. Bottles, diapers, soft lullabies hummed at 3 a.m. Arya found herself forgetting what time it was or whether she'd brushed her hair, but never, not once, did she feel alone. Gabriel was there for every cry, every feeding, every moment. He insisted on splitting nighttime duties, often rolling into the nursery ahead of her, even when exhaustion dulled his edges. One night, as he cradled one of the twins, Isla, against his shoulder, he looked over at Arya rocking baby Elodie in the glider and whispered, "I didn't know I had this much love inside me." Arya's heart ached and swelled all at once. Neither did I. Weeks passed. One evening, Gabriel surprised Arya with a candlelit dinner on the rooftop garden. It was modest, just pasta, sparkling cider, and music playing softly in the background, but Arya felt like royalty. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, touched. "I wanted to remind you," he replied, pouring her drink, "that you're still the woman who stole my heart long before our daughters were born." They ate slowly, savoring both the food and the quiet. The babies were asleep downstairs, monitored by a trusted nurse. It was the first hour they had completely to themselves in weeks. Gabriel reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking." Arya tilted her head. "Uh-oh," he chuckled. "Don't panic." She smiled. "All right, I'm listening." His thumb caressed her palm. "You don't have to answer tonight. But would you ever consider making this permanent? Being with me, marrying me?" The question landed gently but firmly, like a feather with weight. Arya's heart fluttered. "You really want that?" Gabriel's voice was quiet, but steady. "Every day I wake up beside you, I feel like I've won something I never knew I was allowed to hope for. I know I come with limitations, but I also come with forever." Tears welled up again, her default response to everything these days. "I don't need to think about it," she said, voice thick. "The answer is yes." His grin was boyish, unguarded. "Yeah?" She nodded, standing slowly. Gabriel wheeled forward, and she lowered herself into his lap, arms looping around his neck. "I choose you," she whispered, forehead pressed to his. "I'd choose you again in every version of this life." They kissed under the moonlight, two people who had walked through pain, found each other in the wreckage and decided to rebuild, together. The following day, Gabriel made a quiet call. Within hours, the nursery was transformed into a celebration. Streamers hung above the crib. A soft banner read, "Welcome home, forever family." In the center of the room, nestled in their bassinets, Isla and Elodie gurgled happily. Arya and Gabriel stood side by side, arms around each other, looking down at the daughters they had created through one unexpected night that bloomed into a love neither of them could have imagined. There was no grand proposal, no sparkling diamond on a mountaintop. Just two souls who had found everything they needed, within each other, and in the tiny, perfect lives that made their love everlasting. Do you believe the best love stories are the ones we never see coming? Let Arya and Gabriel's journey remind you that one night, one choice, can lead to a lifetime of miracles. Like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to Love and Twilights for more stories that heal, inspire, and stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Arya stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Gabriel rock Elodie gently in his arms. The baby's soft breathing matched the rhythm of the glider. A lullaby hummed from Gabriel's lips, low, melodic, calming. Arya's heart swelled. The scene before her felt like a dream from another life. Not the one she had lived. Crowded subway trains, sleepless nights in a tiny apartment, borrowed dresses, whispered prayers for stability, but the one she hadn't dared to believe was possible. Gabriel looked up and smiled, eyes alight with wonder. She finally drifted off. Arya crossed the room and knelt beside him, brushing a kiss against Elodie's downy hair. "You're a natural." He grinned. "They didn't come with a manual, but I'm figuring it out. She adores you. They both do. And I adore you," he replied, no hesitation in his voice. He said it more these days, not like a novelty, but like a rhythm, a truth that belonged to every breath. Arya looked around the room. Photographs now lined the shelves, tiny fists wrapped around fingers, giggling eyes, Gabriel holding both girls on his chest like they were his heartbeat. This was their life now, and it was beautiful. Weeks passed, then months. The chaos of newborn life gave way to a familiar, loving routine. Arya and Gabriel shared everything. The early morning feedings, the long nights, the doctor visits, the joyful panic of baby milestones. There were moments of exhaustion, sure, but there was never loneliness. One quiet evening, Gabriel wheeled into the living room carrying a small box. Arya glanced up from the playmat where Isla was attempting her first roll. "What's that?" He set the box beside her and opened it. Inside was a thin, elegant necklace, 2 tiny intertwined rings hanging from a delicate gold chain. "One for each of them," he explained, "and one for you to wear always." Arya blinked back sudden tears. "It's beautiful. It's not flashy," he added quickly, "but it's ours." She reached out and cupped his cheek. "It's perfect." Gabriel fastened it around her neck, his fingers brushing her collarbone, his lips trailing to her shoulder in a kiss of gratitude. "I wanted you to have something you could hold on to, even when life gets chaotic." She smiled. "You already gave me the 2 most important things I could ever hold." They sat together in silence for a while, watching Isla gurgle and flail and find joy in her discovery of motion. "I think I want to write again," Arya said softly. Gabriel turned to her. "Then do it. I'll clear a room and make you an office." She laughed. "You're serious? I want you to have more than just diapers and lullabies. I want you to have yourself." That night, when the twins were asleep and the moon hung like a sentinel in the sky, Arya wrote again. Her fingers danced across the keys. The words poured out, gentle and steady. Stories about love that started with scars and built something unshakable. And in every sentence, Gabriel was there, quietly, steadily, the center of her new world. On a spring afternoon, Gabriel invited Arya and the girls out into the garden. The roses had returned in bloom, white, pink, and soft lavender. The twins giggled in their stroller, mesmerized by the fluttering petals and warm breeze. Gabriel handed Arya a small envelope. She raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "An official invitation," he said, his smile playful, "to a private ceremony. Just us." Inside was a simple handwritten card. "You, me, Isla, and Elodie. At the place where everything changed, the hotel lounge. This Saturday. Wear white, if you feel like it. We'll write our own vows." Arya pressed the card to her heart. "You really want this?" He nodded. "I want to marry you. Not because we have to, but because I can't imagine a life where I don't." She smiled through tears. "Then you better be ready to hear my vows. I've got stories to tell." That Saturday, the hotel lounge was closed to the public, just for them. The same soft jazz tune played in the background. Gabriel sat waiting near the window in a tailored navy suit, a single rose pinned to his lapel. The same chair, the same view. But this time, no shadows haunted his eyes. Arya entered slowly, the twins in the arms of a family friend nearby. Her white dress shimmered like a quiet promise. She met Gabriel's gaze across the room, and they both smiled, knowing everything it had taken to get here. No audience, no altar, just truth between them. Gabriel took her hand. "Arya, you changed the way I breathe. You taught me that strength doesn't mean holding everything inside. It means letting someone in. You are my calm, my compass, and my home. I vow to love you fiercely even on the hard days, especially on the hard days." Arya blinked away tears. "Gabriel, you walked into my life when I had nothing but questions, and you gave me answers I didn't know I needed. You gave me peace, and when I gave you my heart, you held it gently. You never made me feel like too much or not enough. I vow to keep choosing you, even when life gets messy, even when sleep is a luxury, even when our daughters grow up and forget how small they once were. I'll still be standing beside you." They kissed. No announcements, no applause, just love, whole, unwavering, and real. Later that evening, as the twins dozed in their cribs, Gabriel and Arya danced again, this time not in a lounge chair, not in someone else's space, but in their bedroom, her head on his shoulder, his arms around her back. They swayed in slow silence, a rhythm born not of music, but of memory. "Do you regret any of it?" he asked, brushing her hair back. "Not a second," she said, "because one night gave me everything." He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "And everything led me back to you." They stood that way for a long while, wrapped in quiet, wrapped in each other, wrapped in the family they never planned but always needed. Their story hadn't begun with certainty. It hadn't followed a plan. It began in shadows, carved from loneliness, fear, and unexpected grace. But now, it was theirs. And it would never end. Sometimes, love doesn't knock. It crashes in when you least expect it, flawed, inconvenient, but perfect in its own way. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment sharing your favorite part. Tap like, share it with someone who still believes in Seco ND chances, and subscribe to Love and Twilights for more unforgettable journeys just like Arya and Gabriel's. Because here, love always finds a way.